I'd like to call this meeting to order. I'll do a roll call. I don't know if I have, I guess I'll use the email to do the roll call. Okay. Shelby, just please say here if you're here. Shelby? Seems like Shelby's not here yet. Jonna?
Here.
Joe?
Here.
Matt?
Here.
Colin? Alicia?
Here.
Christina?
Here.
Nolan?
Here.
Okay. Has everyone had a chance to look over the agenda? Would anyone like to make a motion to approve that?
I move we approve the agenda.
Second.
All right, that's approved. Would anyone like to make a motion to approve the minutes from the last meeting?
I move we approve the minutes from the Commission on Sustainability meeting from Tuesday, December 14th, 2021.
Second.
All right, minutes are approved. Is anyone here from the public?
I am.
Oh, hi, Don. Would you like to make a comment? Would you like to comment?
Yes.
Please do so.
First thing, those that may not know, I'm on the Environmental Commission. I'm also very active with MCIRS, which 4 positions are now vacant on the Environmental Commission. And so we're looking to also looking for people to fill in, people who left at the end of last month. So we have, 4 positions are open. I don't know which, if they're all council or mayoral. I'm not aware of who appointed them. Also, our wildlife corridor, biodiversity sustainability group is now continues to be active, which also is an issue that would, of course, relate to your commission. Also related to your commission is the activities at MCIRS. We are continuing to have our, with the park department, invasive plant weed wrangles this winter. This week it'll be Friday, and weather permitting Saturday. There's a sign up availability on the MCIRS Facebook page, as well as I think it's on the maybe on the at their website as well. Also, one of the MCIRS officers now is going to be working in the Parks Department as an outreach person. She's very good. Jillian Field is very good, quite experienced at outreach. And so therefore, again, knowing that your commission's concerns for outreach, she may be one of the people that you can may be able to help you. I'm very impressed by her. So that's all I have to say.
Okay, thank you. Thanks for that, Don, for that update from the Environmental Commission. Is anyone else here from the public?
I'm from the public. I'm just a new resident to the area. I've been here for about 6 months, and I'm just looking to get involved and see what's going on in the local community. So I have my background is in project management, and as I said, I'm right inside Bloomington, by Bryant Park. So nice to meet y'all. Have me.
It's
Before
nice
the
to meet you, David. And I was just going to point out that we also have openings on this commission. So if you like what you see, you could be a part of our commission as well.
I'll be honest, I've already applied.
Okay.
yeah. So it's in there, and I have not, I'll be honest, gotten through your very comprehensive sustainability efforts, but it's on my list. Thank you.
Thank you. Sorry, Matt, you were saying something?
I was actually going to add that bit of information that before we called the meeting to order and before everybody was on, David had shared that he had applied to the commission. So I wanted to make sure that was shared. That's all.
Okay, thank you for that. Okay, I don't have a report from the chair for today. Report from the council ex officio. Is that Matt? Is this council member Flaherty? Are you an ex officio?
That is me
now? Okay.
Ex officio just means by virtue of the office. So the council seat on the Commission on Sustainability has always been an ex officio post. Sometimes folks confuse that that's a non-voting member, but that is not the case. Simply by virtue of the office, I sit here. And yeah, that's me. I'm happy to share an update if that sounds good to folks. And I'll also just note that Colin has now joined as well, and that puts us at 8 members. So we have a quorum even by old definitions of quorum, which is out of a majority out of the 14 possible seats, regardless of how many are filled, which makes tonight perhaps a prime opportunity to vote on the amendments to bylaws later in the agenda. So let's see, on the council front, we of course had council recess over the holiday break, came back last Wednesday with organization day. As with a lot of commissions, a lot of turnover and things happening right at the change in the calendar year, we voted on officer positions for the year. The council president for 2022 is at-large Representative Susan Sandberg. The vice president is Sue Scambolari from District 2, and parliamentarian is Councilmember Dave Rallo from District 4. I think we are still awaiting board and commission appointments for council members. A number of us sit on different boards and commissions, not all, as well as various advisory committees related to special taxes and other things like that. Relevant to this commission, the BCOS term for a council member is actually a 2-year term, which I'm in the middle of. So I believe tomorrow night when President Sandberg appoints those positions, I will remain in my role serving BCOS this coming year, and the rest will be sorted out in that meeting. So we'll have those answers soon. Another relevant update, the council has over the last, number of years, sometimes used standing committees to handle legislation or proactively handle other matters. Longer standing examples of this are the Jack Hopkins Social Services Funding Committee, which helps to organize and with members of the public allocate a little over $300,000 to social services agencies, as well as the Council Sidewalk Committee, now Transportation Committee, that since 1992 has worked with city staff to prioritize what is now about $300,000 for sidewalk gap improvements and infrastructure needs. And then more recently, and I think circa about 2017, the council started using the land use committee to handle more in-depth and complicated land use matters, such as planned unit developments that came our way. And council committees had been in use by the city council since the late 70s, but have sort of fallen in and out of fashion at various times. most recently, over the last 2 years, we had been using committees on occasion to handle pending legislative items, as well as, again, to kind of proactively organize, proactive work as opposed to legislation that was pending. I share all that as background to note that there's a resolution on our agenda for tomorrow night that would eliminate a number of current standing committees. The very short of it is there's a roughly even split among council members about their utility and how we should be using them. I'll note it's a common procedural mechanism that most legislative bodies use, but there's a feeling among some members also that we're small enough or involved enough that all matters should be handled by all 9 members all the time. And we do that through a mechanism called Committee of the Whole. So that's technically a committee meeting, but it looks a lot like a council meeting because it's all 9 members and we're technically reporting back to ourselves. So anyway, lots of fun, in-depth procedural issues. The implications for BCOS are really only that the Climate Action and Resilience Committee is among those slated to be abolished tomorrow in a resolution. I actually developed an amendment to preserve that, along with 2 other committees, the administration and what's the other one? Oh, Land Use Committee, for this year's work, acknowledging that 5-4 majority of the council does not prefer to use committees for handling pending legislation, and that's fine. But I think committees can have other important uses, including, again, working more proactively on developing legislation or developing procedural reforms, for instance, with the administration committee. So the Climate Action and Resilience Committee in particular, I feel strongly should remain in place because we've got a recently approved climate action plan that has an 8-year implementation time period. There are a lot of legislative issues in that climate action plan that the council by itself does not have the staff capacity or simply hours among ourselves as part-time representatives to fully develop and implement, nor do I think those things should be developed in isolation by city staff, Lauren and her team. So those things require collaboration, and it's proactive work to develop legislation, to conduct community outreach and engagement, weigh trade-offs, and put together ordinances and even programs potentially in some contexts. So my view is that having a standing group of 4 people whose job is designated as that, organizing and making progress on that work would be useful. So I brought an amendment to preserve that, and a couple of other committees that, again, we'll be hearing tomorrow night at our regular session. Yeah, sorry, kind of involved, but that's the biggest thing happening at the council right now, and not a whole lot of direct impact on BCOS, except to the extent that it affects how we organize work around the climate action plan. So I know that's on our agenda for later this evening, looking at BCOS engagement with the Bloomington Climate Action Plan. We had, for instance, planned on, prior to this resolution, planned on quarterly meetings with the city council's Climate Action Resilience Committee with Lauren's team. And I thought involving the chair of BCOS or a subgroup of BCOS in those meetings might be useful as well. But we'll see if those end up happening. So just wanted to update you all on that front. I don't think there's other major legislative things happening right now that impact the Commission on Sustainability. I guess one I'll mention is there is an ordinance to extend the street closures on Kirkwood and reallow those during the sort of late March to October months. We'll hear first reading and then Committee of the Whole following that on Wednesday as well. So kind of a social economic sustainability element there. That program has been quite successful during the pandemic, which of course is still very much ongoing. It's been helpful to help keep members of the public safe and help businesses continue to stay afloat. So I think that probably wraps up the report from council. Any questions? I'm happy to answer.
Alicia had a question in the chat. Does this affect, or how do we handle advising on pending legislation if not through committees?
There'd be any number of ways. I think that's one potential advantage of committees, that it sort of designates a particular route or chair, the chair of the committee as a person to route feedback through or ask questions to. But of course, all council members, serve the public and serve and work with our commissions. So I would love to see BCOS and other commissions weighing in more regularly on policy issues as well as legislation that is before the council. You can do that during public comment during our meetings. In general, every regular session has a period for public comment on items not on the agenda. And then anytime, of course, that we're hearing legislation, whether in a committee form or in a regular session, public comment is welcome. In terms of organizing like an official BCOS stance on legislative items, it's a little bit trickier simply because of timing. To take a position on something, you all need to vote on it probably. And that can be done in the form of a resolution, which typically has 2 readings, but in our bylaws, with unanimous consent, a resolution can be heard and passed in the same night it's introduced. So that would be one way, for instance, for BCOS in the future, if the timing works out, if there's legislation before the council that's already been released, but not yet voted on when a BCOS meeting happens, a BCOS member could bring a resolution to take a position on it. So that'd be a more official stance. And of course, just emailing council members and or attending their constituent meetings is another way to add your input, and if not official BCOS stance.
Thanks. Did that answer your question, Alicia?
Yeah, thank you.
And that's right. I see your question or message in the chat as well, Najla, that this is just about council standing committees. It has nothing to do with committees of this commission and their ability to meet and operate how they wish.
For that report, I personally support the program of closing Kirkwood. Myself, from a sustainability perspective, it makes our city more walkable, which is always good for both business and the environment. So both as someone with a business background and from sustainability, I think it's a win-win. But I don't think it's something that you expect to be controversial or necessarily need BCOS action to help with, or do you expect it to be controversial?
I'm not sure. I know at least one person who's reached out to the council with negative feedback about the proposal. So I guess we'll learn more tomorrow.
Mm-hmm. All right. Any more comments on that, Colin?
Can you hear me all right? Okay, great. Good evening, everybody. I wanted to make a few points on this resolution coming to council that would eliminate standing committees. The first one is that I'm quite disturbed by it, frankly. I think it would be a misread of the situation to think that it was just a procedural move. I'm not saying that you have said this, Matt, per se, but I think that this is more than just a procedural move, because any kind of action to eliminate something like a climate action and resilience committee on a city council is a political move, like inherently, in my opinion. And so I'm concerned about the move and I oppose it. And so I'll be supporting that, your resolution. And I would also move that any commissioners on this call today who are interested in sort of supporting Matt's efforts at council tomorrow to retain the Climate Action Resilience Committee, that we kind of communicate, maybe organize just a little bit for tomorrow. So those would be my comments on that. Thanks. Oh, I guess, and the reason why I think it's a political move is because, and I'm struggling to assume good faith here, of course, on the part of those bringing it forward, is because we're in a rapidly, as we've kind of registered before, we're in a rapidly deteriorating global situation with regards to the climate crisis. And so we need all hands on deck, and the Climate Action Resilience Committee is part of that, in my opinion.
thanks. And Colin, were you suggesting that we have that those of us interested or available, like, meet to discuss being able to support this, to attend the council meeting?
Yeah, I'm not sure we necessarily need to meet, but we could certainly just exchange emails and coordinate to speak if possible at that meeting. Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, as the chair of the policy working group, however that still exists, if it does, I support that, and I'm willing to do that as well.
Great. Anyone else who's interested, feel free to chime in now or shoot me an email. Thanks.
Great. Any other comment on the report from council member Flaherty? Okay, our next item is discussions, not resolutions. I'm not sure why it's worded that way, but I guess we're discussing things. The first one is because term expirations. Everyone I think should have already provided notice to Lauren if they're not going to be continuing. And I think we all should be finding out. I, for instance, just reapplied for my 2-length term. I think we should be finding out fairly soon. For those of us who applied, do you know exactly what the deadline, what the dates are for that? Matt, do you happen to know?
Yes, I just
okay.
I just dropped a link in the chat that specific to the Commission on Sustainability page where all of you are listed, including when your term expires. Terms expire at the end of January, and we generally try to fill those as quickly as possible. We use either standing committees or interview committees to make those choices. In particular, sometimes with reappointments where folks have expressed interest, we don't interview the person necessarily, though sometimes we do. And turnover is a good thing too, but some of that happens naturally enough usually. So if your term happens to expire this month, January 2022, make sure that you've got a current application on file and have shared with Lauren your interest in serving again, or if you are a common council appointment, please do share that with me.
All right, any questions about that? Okay, so we should all be letting Matt and or Lauren know our plans to continue on the committee, or sorry, the commission. Because engagement with the Bloomington Climate Action Plan, Matt, would you like to lead the way on this item as well?
Sure, though I'll just really open it up to commissioners. I think we're fairly early stages in implementing the climate action plan, and obviously Lauren and her team are working on it. Actually, a quick, I guess, related note on that front is one of the ordinances we're hearing this week includes, I can't believe I left this out of my report, actually, I apologize, includes a new staff position in sustainability. So big news, actually, apologies. That was discussed and agreed upon through the budget cycle last year. So Lauren will, a new posting is being approved and will go out soon for another sustainability position who will be under Lauren. And she, of course, works with a variety of student interns and others too. So anyway, Lauren, Alex, their team on ESD and others in the city all work on various elements of the climate action plan. And this commission is charged as the citizen body that's meant to help implement and oversee. And what that exactly means, I think, is an open question and still being developed. So I'll leave it at that and open it to members for their thoughts.
Well, just a thought based on what we've been doing is it seems like one thing this commission might do is help us with like the next iteration of the plan or adding to the plan, because that's kind of what we're doing with the Just Transition group, in the town hall. We're kind of thinking about like, what are the pieces that maybe the climate action plan didn't address. So maybe that's just one way that this commission can help. I'm sure there's other ways because, I always struggle with the reality that we have, day jobs and time limitations. So, I want to think about realistic things that this commission can do. And it seems like being advisory is what we can do.
Thanks, Alicia. Joseph?
Yeah, thank you. I want to add to that. I think, well, I'd like to, I think first revisit a couple of important components of the definition of the BCOS and particularly with respect to its role with the climate action plan. I know in past meetings, particularly with the terms authority and oversight, I think it's important to really make sure it's clear what the BCOS is and what it's been called to do. And that I think advising, as Alicia mentioned, is one of the important things. If you take a look at the BCOS statute, which I'll put in the chat in case anybody wants to reference that. It really calls out two main things in the powers and duties. And the first one in point A is to coordinate ongoing and to propose and promote new sustainability initiatives, which is something that I would be personally really interested in seeing the BCOS participate in to really help spread the importance of the climate action plan and the need for community engagement on it. And then the second item in the code is to advise and make recommendations to the Bloomington Common Council, city administration, and city boards and commissions. So I think that is also a really good fit for what the commission needs to do. And that also within the climate action plan itself, which I can put into the chat for reference. Following that point, there is on page 129 of that PDF, or 123, the document under section 10 titled Climate Action Implementation. It lists under external support to establish the Commission on Sustainability as the main citizen body to support the implementation of the Climate Action Plan. So again, my interest is really trying to help make it happen rather than try to make changes to it or try to make new iterations of it. I think there's a lot of work and effort and content that's already been provided and a lot of action items that are to be done. And I think this body could fill, I guess, some of the support needs. It actually has two subpoints under that line in the climate action plan that the Commission on Sustainability can form subcommittees that focus on particular areas. And the second is to coordinate with city staff to receive updates on projects in progress. So what I see is our role less as an authority or oversight, but more as a means to help achieve some of the actual progress on getting things done, and then just to track with the city how those things are going. So that's where I stand, and I'm also interested in other commissioners' inputs as well, because I think it's a good thing to establish, particularly at the start of the year as well, to kind of set the tone and the plan for going forward. Thanks.
Thanks, Joseph. And what page of the climate action plan are you referring to that mentions our commission?
Yeah, so it's page 123 of the document itself, but as always, the PDF and the document don't actually have exactly the same numbers. So if you're viewing the PDF that I sent the link to, that's on page 129. It's right at the top of the page titled Climate Action Implementation External Support number 1.
So I definitely agree. Helping with implementation of the climate action plan is completely important as well. I think maybe where I'm struggling is like, it's such a big plan, and how do we as people who, like I said, have day jobs and everything, how do we help? And how do we stay up to date with kind of like what's going on so that we can help, I think, maybe we need some sort of way of keeping track of what the ongoing projects are so that every month we can check in on them and see how we could help, because I think that's where we're struggling right now.
So, so yeah, did you want to say anything, Joseph, or
I just want a quick note to Alicia's remark that I know in a previous exchange with Lauren that she has a plan to put together a sort of dashboard for progress, and she had noticed the sort of noted the cost and benefit ratio of how much time should one invest in describing what has been done as opposed to making sure that more keeps getting done. So trying to balance, you know, the time and quantity of information that goes into the status updates. But yeah, that's important to me too, and I'm looking forward to and kind of following how that will be developed.
Matt?
Sorry, all. This is an aside. David just sent me a private message that, as noted on the Commission on Sustainability page, he has been appointed to BCOS, and none of us were aware of it. And he might have missed an email communication or something, though he isn't aware of one. But he is on our members page. And yeah, there may have been some crossed lines communication with Lauren since he's a mayoral appointment. But I figured we should go ahead and welcome David to the Commission and invite him to join this discussion.
I'm really glad I showed up for the meeting. Thank you. Nice to meet you all. Ooh.
Yeah, welcome, David.
Now I have a lot more catching up to do. So yeah, sorry for an interruption, but thanks for welcoming me.
Awesome. That's one fewer empty seat we have. Oh yeah, and I was just going to say the same thing, that I think Lauren is definitely the person to give us those monthly updates and to give us her suggestions for how she thinks that we can be most helpful in supporting the implementation of the plan. That kind of info that you're looking for, Alicia. Colin, you have a comment?
Yeah, thank you, Joseph, for bringing. Thank you, Joseph, for bringing this up. I'm also really interested in sort of fulfilling that original role for BCOS. And so in my professional capacity, I'm studying climate action plans in cities all over the country. And so cities are doing this implementation differently, the implementation of their climate action plans and their sustainability plans. Oftentimes there's sort of a body, like an advisory body, like we've been designated, that's created specifically to bring different stakeholders together to help implement the plan. Now I know that with BCOS, like we're sort of self-selecting, right? It's folks who are either approached by a council member or by the mayor, or folks who know about the vacancy who apply. So I'm wondering, like, would it strengthen the implementation of, or would it strengthen BCOS's role if, say, there was, I don't know, some way we could build in maybe more grassroots level, like, or maybe neighborhood specific buy-in or contribution, if that makes sense. Like maybe to make it a little bit less self-selecting. Do you know? I wonder if that would maybe improve our role in implementing, like improve the representativeness of it. This is just me spitballing out loud, by the way. That's one point. Another point would be, so I see that in the section of the CAP that Joseph mentioned, it says, uses words like support the implementation of, and then form committees to focus on. Those are the action words of particular areas of the CAP, but that's not extremely specific, I feel. So I think we maybe need to do more work to determine what that support actually looks like. And I'm wondering if creating some kind of mechanism, right, or a plan to help implement the plan for BCOS would be useful. That kind of explicitly lays out, okay, this is what supporting the implementation of the CAP looks like, because the city has directed us to do that. And this is what focusing on particular areas of the CAP means. Does that make sense? So, because right now it feels rather ambiguous, frankly, to me at least. Now I will say that there's another point that's quite specific, which is coordinating with city staff in all relevant departments to receive updates on city projects and progress on the CAP. Now that's specific, that's sort of an oversight type, or having hearings, I don't know how you want to frame it. So we can certainly do that, but I feel like number one and then the first bullet there are a bit ambiguous. And I think we can collectively sort of clarify that together, perhaps with Lauren and Matt. I don't know if anyone has thoughts on that. So that basically the idea of maybe creating a mechanism, a sort of something in writing that's specific, that clarifies this section of the CAP implementation.
I just pasted the relevant part of the CAP into the chat for everyone.
Thanks, Najla.
Joseph?
Yeah, I do like that idea. I think that would be really helpful for helping, define and direct how we work collectively. Did you have any particular thoughts as to the when and how of working through that? Or is that maybe what this conversation is?
Yeah, I think this conversation it could be for that. I'm curious if Nolan or John or Christy or Alicia had thoughts on that particular idea, which is again to sort of explicitly flesh out on paper what in actionable terms BCOS's role in supporting the CAP implementation looks like. Just so we're all clear, if you will.
Yeah, no, I agree. It's helpful to define exactly how we can do this.
I think you said Matt, Najla, but you're muted. Yeah, I was just going to share that I'm the council's representative on the, there's an internal city climate working group that's been in operation for a few years, and the council was recently invited to have a representative there, and I've been filling that role. I've just been to one meeting so far, but both in that and in what were planned quarterly meetings for the Climate Action Resilience Committee with Lauren's team, top priority for me was developing a work plan based on the items that are legislative in nature that we sort of have a role in, and based on their phasing and kind of priority within the plan, and trying to make sure that we're structuring that work in a way that keeps us on track. So I'll just reiterate that if the Climate Action and Resilience Committee survives, I think having BCOS, a BCOS member or a few involved in that makes sense to help be involved in that part, which will surely involve community engagement and stakeholder engagement in some at some level. And then second, just to echo sort of the sentiments that other members are sharing right now, which is that I think a work plan and organizing the structure of how BCOS engages with that plan is a great idea to make sure that, to think through all those pieces and figure out how that will actually work in practice. So just wanted to voice support for that approach.
So it sounds like there may be another subcommittee that we want to form to help support the council committee, possibly.
Yeah, that could work. We can kind of hold on that because there's some uncertainty at the moment. That could work, or it could be an ex officio thing, like whoever's the chair or whoever, the chair and vice chair or whatever y'all want to do. But we can kind of, it's a little premature probably to settle on that just now. It's just because some things are up in the air.
Okay, so getting back to the agenda here. Does anyone have anything else to add on our discussion of BCOS engagement with the climate action plan? It sounds like we're all agreed that we would like to have a more defined role, or a more defined role in writing at some point on how BCOS will engage with the climate action plan, and possibly have a subcommittee to work with the council committee if the committee survives. Does anyone want to get started on that, on a first draft of that? Joseph or Colin, you seem interested you both seem interested in that topic. Would anyone like to get started on a rough draft that we could possibly approve at the next meeting? Joseph?
Yeah, I did actually, if I may jump back to right before you pose that question, I wanted to check in with Matt to see if there was a notion of when such a work plan might be produced from the council end or from the Climate Action Committee end.
Yeah, it's something that might be refined over time. I've got a one-on-one with Lauren scheduled for, I think, January 25th. And then the next city internal working group meeting, climate working group meeting is in February sometime. So I was hoping to make some meaningful progress on it by then. And at least I'm kind of going through the process now of rereading the plan and pulling out items with legislative elements or where the council kind of should be actively involved. And again, organizing that initially by phases and then just by a steady balance of work over the next 7+ years of the implementation timeframe. So yeah, hopefully within the next few months, there's some progress on that. I can share an update in our next BCOS meeting.
That'd be great, thank you. If I may follow up on that, I just thought that's a pretty important piece of information for this body to have when determining how to best get involved and define our involvement. If a work group is already being, if a work plan is already being established, I feel like we would be able to best fit in based around that and then advise on the things in the order that they're established in the work plan, rather than having our own discussions and making our own decisions as a separate body without knowledge of that work plan.
One thing I'll follow up on just on that thought, Joseph, is that it'll be pretty specific to legislation, and there's probably more that BCOS could or should do around public engagement on new programs that are developed internally. For instance, like the Green Home Improvements Program that was launched last year by BCOS that I think is part of the plan and that sort of thing. Like council had no role in that, so those types of things will continue happening. There's probably space for BCOS to work in other ways with the plan besides just the legislative components, though I would certainly welcome BCOS's involvement in those.
Christy?
Yeah, that was my question too, when I heard you mention that it was going to be kind of targeted to legislative action type components of the plan, and whether like city staff was either creating like a dashboard where, because like throughout the plan, there's these things like how we'll measure progress, and most strategies have kind of like a quantitative goal to them. So I was curious if there's some sort of like system being developed that's like, oh, every year we're going to do like a green, yellow, red coding system of like whether we're on track to meet this metric or something. And so if something like that is already in the works and it's something that we can kind of advise and review and provide feedback on, yeah, I agree. It'd be great to like kind of like find out what's being built rather than duplicate efforts. I'm happy. I've done a couple of those processes with different strategic plans. So I'm happy to kind of hop on conversations, provide details of what that kind of dashboard could look like.
I can provide a little bit of feedback on that, Najla, if you'd like, and Christy. Lauren would, of course, be better suited to give you updates on this. There is some sort of dashboard in development, I know, and maybe that's a great place, Christy, for you and or BCOS members to be involved on advising as that gets developed too, and giving feedback once it is. So yeah, something is in development on that front. I don't know a lot of details.
Nolan?
Yeah, I can speak a little bit to that. You may be aware of Be Clear, which was our kind of transparency portal for the government to give information to the public. We're now moving towards something called Socrata, and I know they're working on the dashboard, and I believe, I won't speak for Lauren, but I believe that's where the dashboard is going to land. And I think there's something on there that's open to the public, but I don't want to speak for Lauren right now, but they're working on it.
All right, any other comments on BCOS engagement with the CAP? It sounds like we're gonna wait to hear the council work plan before moving forward. Colin? Your hand is up?
Yeah, thanks, Najla. I think you just confirmed what I was about to ask, which is, are we going to then just hold off on drafting a potential implementation plan until that work plan is set? It sounds like that's the case.
that's what I would suggest after hearing everyone's comments. Does anyone want to agree or disagree with that suggestion? Joseph?
Yeah, I think following Matt's remark about the, I guess, legislative portions of the implementation of the plan. I don't know off the top of my head exactly what proportion that would be non to is legislative, but I feel like there's potential for the Beat Coast to be involved sooner than that, or at least now seems like a good opportunity to continue fleshing out ideas or thoughts. I know, Najla, you had asked if anybody wanted to start drafting the language of the engagement, but I feel like there isn't much of a consensus yet among commissioners as to what and how we'll go forward in order to draft that language. Perhaps it's just me, but I feel like there's maybe more voices to be heard or more direction to be given. I also want to encourage David. I know this is all a lot of information and new, but I mean, by all means, chime in if you have thoughts. I'd be interested in hearing them, even as, you know, just from an outside perspective. I think there'd be value to that as well. So I would encourage you to not be shy.
Thank you. I just have one thought that before I go in and learn all the history from you guys, is there any engagement with local businesses, or do you have any champions in the commercial sector that are involved in the work plan, the proposed work plan?
On the council side, not for specifically for organizing the timeline of like legislative work, when those legislative initiatives, to the extent that they affect private sector employers and that sort of thing, like absolutely they would be brought in as stakeholders to participate in that process. I think the timing of what I'm thinking of with the legislative work plan is driven really by the plan that's already been approved. That said, both the Bloomington Economic Development Corporation and the Chamber of Commerce were involved in the plan's development. And I know Lauren and her team with city staff, who are doing the bulk of this work, of course, are actively engaged with those business representatives and I'm sure other individual entities, especially probably large scale Bloomington employers, about sustainability efforts. So those connections exist to some extent. I think it's a good point, David, to keep in mind as BCOS scopes and defines its role too, as kind of a liaison between the community and the city, that economic sustainability and incorporating sustainability into the business sector is a great thing to do. So
so you're getting good support from them.
Good engagement. I don't know if it might be premature to talk much about how I guess I haven't seen a lot of specific business or business representative, like business group representative support of the climate action plan in aggregate. I think some of that may come more on a policy by policy basis, that type of engagement, things that may affect them, or energy efficiency or transportation demand management, programs, those sort of things that will directly engage them. Though I think overall the mood is positive, and
neutral is even better. So you can work on them,
I don't think there's hostility to the climate action plan, but probably lots of details to be sorted out when you get to particular policies that may affect their members.
Right. Thank you.
Okay. And thanks for your comment in the chat, Colin. Yes, I totally also support commissioners who want to start jotting down ideas for how BCOS can support the CAP implementation. I do feel like the climate action plan implementation hopefully will also intersect or overlap somewhat with what we're doing in the Just Transition Working Group. I think you mentioned that, Alicia. Yeah, I think I'm also hoping that we can get some more clarification of what the council's looking for as far as support on the climate action plan. going forward. Any other comments on this topic? Okay, moving on to Robert's Rules training. I know we're going to be holding new elections soon, or choosing new officers for the commission, and several people had, or at least a couple people, I think at the last meeting, Colin had suggested maybe there could be a refresher on Robert's Rules where we could all kind of get anyone who wanted to attend might get a refresher on that. I think Council Member Flaherty, were you looking into that? I think the city was going to provide some kind of training, or was that Lauren who was doing that?
Joseph may have things to add here too. My mention of that, maybe in an email exchange with a few of you, was that there has been some past discussion of providing like onboarding training, maybe on an annual basis for new commissioners, since most of these, of course, commissioners come on during the middle of the year in various contexts, but almost all commission appointments have either a December 31st or a January 31st term end date, which means that come March of every year, we've got a whole bunch of new commissioners, and having some training about the role of commissions, legal issues, parliamentary issues, I think would be helpful. It's something that's been discussed a little bit among city staff and council members, but it's not anything that, to my knowledge, is prepared or being implemented this year. I think it's a great idea. But I think in the absence of that, there was maybe some desire still for a BCOS specific discussion.
Did you have any comments on this, or Joseph, sorry, did you have any comments on the last topic?
I did on the last topic, but
okay.
I think the transition is made, so it's better to just keep moving with where we are. And I, to Matt's remark, I do want to add or follow up in saying that I think it's of great value for, in the absence of having a city managed onboarding program, to be able to, at least for the present time and for this particular body, still have a Robert's Rules brief info session, I'll say, because I think it's something that can be potentially holding back the capacity of this body, but any in general, to be unfamiliar with the processes involved. And also, like Colin had mentioned at the last meeting, or maybe it was even Jarrett, just sort of establishing when and how we want to implement them to make sure that our meetings are productive and clear and agreed upon. So what I would like to, I guess, personally offer is to curate something like 10 or 15 minute slot to designate to that. And the subsequent, that would be our February meeting, once we have our new, or whenever, I suppose, we have our newest commissioners on board from this year's nominations, to be able to just collectively make sure that everyone's on the same page and has all the relevant information, a little bit beyond what was provided in just the training documentation, which is just sort of some of the basics of Robert's Rules without any sort of use demonstration. So that's what I want to get commissioner feedback on, to know if that would be something that you would collectively be interested in devoting 10 or 15 minutes to, or however much time you think is appropriate, before developing any sorts of educational material for it, or spending any more time discussing it. Thanks.
I personally think that would be valuable, Joseph. I'm not an expert in Robert's Rules. I'm totally winging it right now, if you can't tell. Colin or Nolan or David? Colin first, sorry.
Oh, I didn't raise my hand, but I'm happy to speak. Yeah, let's see. I am totally in support of that, a brief training. In fact, if we want to go more like 20 minutes, I would be in support of that, because Robert's Rules is, let's keep it real, it's complex. So we may want to, give it a little extra time so that like we can just get the basics, the bare bones.
Nolan?
I was just giving a thumbs up in support. I serve on another commission in a leadership role, and I hadn't even heard of Robert's rules until we talked about it in this commission. So I think it would be helpful.
Okay, I think David, you had your hand up next.
Yeah, I was just showing my support as well. I would really appreciate that. I could use it. Thank you.
Matt?
Yeah, first, just a suggestion that maybe March would be a better fit, if not too crowded with officer elections, just because I know how these things go on the council end anyway. We're a little slower moving the mayor's office sometimes because we have to have public meetings and wrangle our schedules. But it takes a minute to get appointments filled, and especially since we're on the front half of the month with the monthly BCOS meeting, it's possible that a number of, if we have a number of council appointments to the commission, we'll still be working through those kind of through February. I think that's why we positioned the officer elections in March and not February, for instance. So that might be better suited for Robert's primer. Also, I'm happy to support that and be involved in some way. I think I mentioned to you, Joseph, I've got pretty limited capacity overall to maybe lead it, but I did serve as the council's parliamentarian last year and have spent many hours thinking about Robert's rules and parliamentary procedures. So there might be some things I could add or suggest a few topics anyway and add insight during the training.
I would be very grateful for that. Thank you.
All right, so we're going to plan for that to be prepared for March, and Joseph has volunteered to take the lead on that. Thanks, Joseph. Okay. Moving on to resolutions for second reading. Resolution 2201, amendment of BCOS bylaws. We've got two amendments here. The first one is moving the annual meeting from July to March, and then updating quorum language to majority of actively serving members. Okay, to make that official. So do I need to read this for it to be official then?
I wish we had a little bit more guidance on this. Normally in city council anyway, we require amendments and legislation to reduce to writing. This was in the packet for this meeting, so it was distributed. I think if we were to change anything, we would need to display it, but I don't think we need to do that simply for voting purposes. I will note, I think Lauren had highlighted the changes in yellow in the bylaws that were circulated in the packet, and the annual meeting is it's noted that the commission's monthly meeting in February of each year, the following activities will occur. What
I see, yeah.
We could change that via amendment to the proposed amendments right now. If we wanted to change that to March, we would just want to display that in writing, I think. And the other proposed amendment is about the actively serving members, and that language, I think there's one small sort of clerical error typo in the second instance of that, an extraneous extra word serving. But otherwise, that actively serving members change with the for amendment 2 to the bylaws looks good to go and is in line with what we had discussed previously.
Yeah, and just as a reminder or an explanation for David, who's new, it was an interpretation, there was a difference in legal interpretation of the quorum rules. And because it was somewhat open to interpretation, we decided upon Councilmember Flaherty's advice to specify how we wanted to interpret those rules so that we wouldn't face legal challenges for how we're interpreting them. So we're planning to change it because I guess it could be open to interpretation, meaning all the possible seats are the total number of people. So we would need to have at least half of the total number who could ever join. Okay, yeah, there it is on the screen. So where it says 4, unless otherwise specified, a majority of actively serving members. And so this is more specific. The old language was, what was the old language exactly, Matt? Do you know?
I believe the old language, which is in Bloomington Municipal Code, says unless otherwise specified, a majority of members serving constitutes a quorum. But what defines a member serving was unclear. At one point, to me, a plain language reading of that means filled seats as opposed to vacant seats, because there's no one serving in a vacant seat. But the traditional cautious legal interpretation of the city, where there's often maybe significant financial implications, say with a petition before the plan commission or something, the cautious approach has always been to count the full possible membership as that number of members serving. It's an issue for BCOS in particular, has been historically, because we've got sometimes seats that take a while to get filled, or we had a seat, we still have a seat designated as ex officio from Sustain IU that hasn't really been filled for some time, and I think is still in discussion whether they're going to fill that or not. So it's been difficult to achieve a quorum oftentimes, which makes it difficult to conduct business. So this allows the commission more flexibility to clearly define that quorum as a majority of members actively serving in seats. So hopefully this clarifies any future interpretation issues. But that's actually Amendment 2, if I'm not mistaken, that we're considering. The reason I wanted to display this in particular, Amendment 1, is because we would want to potentially change this February change to March, actually. So the annual meeting at the Commissioners' monthly meeting in March of each year, the following activities shall occur: annual election of officers, annual review of bylaws, et cetera. I'm happy to make that motion to amend the proposed amendment if folks feel good about a March election of officers, given the uncertainty potentially of terms of seats being refilled by the first February meeting. But I'm happy to hear your thoughts on that.
Christy, your hand is up.
Yeah, sorry to throw a wrench in this, but when I got the packet of the agenda, I looked at this and I was like, what does actively serving mean? And then I was like, oh, I missed the last 2 meetings, and I apologize. I was sick and it's just kind of chaos. And I tried to figure out, am I actively serving? And so I didn't know if you guys just want to mute me, that's fine. Because I understand what it means now that it's been explained, but I didn't know if a better term would be non-vacant members or something. I just didn't know what actively serving meant or how that was defined.
And David, you had a question or comment?
I was just going to say, I thought, do you guys ever have retired members that may stay on for an additional period of time after leaving a post in order to help guide in new members? You don't have those?
No, we don't usually have overlapping commissioners, we don't usually have overlapping timelines like that I know of. But there's usually enough commissioners that are still ongoing that have been on the commission that we haven't had too much of a problem as far as people who aren't familiar with the procedures, I think.
I didn't know if there's a sort of reserved capacity that people take on after their official term ends and then they help advise or but that's good. Then that answers my question. So thank you.
Matt, did you want to answer Christy about the language that's of actively serving versus what was the language you suggested, Christy? Oh, non-vacant. Yeah.
Sure. What I'm doing right now is I'm typing up a substitute for the February version that says March instead, so that we just have that in writing. I'll display that on the screen again, and we can vote on that change. I can do the same thing for language with the the actively serving. I actually shared your initial impression, Christy, of being like, wait, what did it say before? And what does this mean? So perhaps that's worth clarifying as well.
Or just adding a sentence someplace saying, like, parentheses, actively serving means non-vacant. I don't know. Either way.
Yeah, we can add something there. So let me just get our resolution number here and I can display this amendment to resolution 2022-01. Also, if this doesn't pass legal muster, when Laura moves back, we can always vote on this again in a future meeting. Though, again, quorum issues being as difficult as they are, I think we should try to knock this out at this meeting if we can.
Joseph, did you want to add anything?
Yeah, I did just want to note that in reading as well, the exact phrasing of non-vacant did seem clearer to me. I've also just in other bylaw conversations tried to grasp what the actual implication of actively serving means, because it didn't seem a whole lot more clear. And given that this was, you know, with the intent of adding clarity, I was hoping for something that would really resolve that. And also I wanted to ask as a point of order, if we have a 2/3 majority present, because I believe that's required for amendment to the bylaws as defined in Article 5. Yeah, Article 5.1, an amendment requires 2/3 majority vote. But I don't know what our current active non-vacant membership count is.
Good point, Joseph. We may not actually have adequate numbers to, until otherwise changed in the bylaws, our bit of a catch-22, our quorum is defined, well, our total membership is defined as 14 members. And so we would need 10. I don't think 9 out of 14 is quite there. So we might be too short.
We would need more than 9 1/4 members, so 10 would be it.
Can you mention what section of the bylaws that is again, Joseph?
Yeah, it's the very last one, section 5.1, amendment to bylaws.
Yeah, I can't remember when we've had 10 people in a meeting though. But I mean, how many? Because the only people who aren't here today is Shelby and Jarrett, right? And we still don't have a 2/3. That's not yeah, I think everyone's here except for 2 people. That's not a 2/3 majority. Or I guess are
also
you
Emma Ferguson.
The total, sorry.
Does anyone know who? Oh, sorry, I might have cut out.
Sorry, Matt. There must be a lag in our speaking. I was just pointing out that I think only 2 people are not here. So hopefully that would be a 2/3 majority of the total non-vacant members. Yeah, but we don't have 14 non-vacant members, do we? Oh, you're on mute, Christy.
The way I think the catch-22 that we're getting at is that, correct, we've never really had a full 14, but technically according to this like conservative interpretation of the bylaws, we need 2/3 of the 14, even if some of the seats are vacant, to change the bylaws.
That makes sense. So we want to interpret it in the most conservative way in order to change the bylaws.
I have a meeting with the director of Sustain IU next week, and I could be like, hey, can you get someone to come to this meeting and vote on this with us in order to like make this more flexible? Just one idea. Because that's it, like that's one of the empty vacancies that's kind of been chronically vacant, I think.
I mean, the other possibility is we can all just agree to interpret it in the way that we're going to change it to, right? I mean, that's how we've been doing it anyway. We've
city
already
legal
been interpreting it that way.
It's fairly low stakes, but city legal may have an issue. You know, so I'm not sure if it's Larry Allen or who our city attorney is who's designated for this. But again, I followed this up with council attorneys, and like the preference is to interpret it the more conservative way it's always been interpreted. So if possible, I think we should probably change it that way. And I would defer to Lauren and her interactions with city legal as well on that.
Nolan?
Just to follow up on Christy's comment, is the ex officio IU sustainability a voting member? All right, thanks.
Okay, so I guess we're gonna try again next month. It sounds like, to vote on this.
Or folks, we can still discuss the amendments, I guess. I share, I think, what seems like the majority view, and wanted to just check in with others that we should have a March annual meeting for officer elections, and then also maybe update again the the proposed language about what constitutes a quorum and members of filled seats, essentially.
Yeah, that sounds good. And I agree with that. And I also think March would be a good time to hopefully take that, to do these changes, because hopefully we'll have good attendance in the March meeting, because that'll be like the first meeting for a lot of people. So hopefully we'll have perfect attendance. Joseph?
Yes, I agree with Matt's remarks about both of those changes. The one thought I wanted to add was that Jared had suggested having the elections 1 month following what is likely to be the first fully attended meeting, just so that it wouldn't be the initial meeting when the vote was taken. So if Matt, you think it's very likely that seats will regularly not be filled until March, then in that case, to have one meeting of all members before a vote is taken, then April would then be the next month, but then we're pushing it closer and closer to the date that it already has. So I see maybe not as much merit in making it March over April, or April over March, sorry. But just wanted to express that thought. Otherwise, I'm on board with March, particularly since February would be the first official meeting when everyone should be present.
Okay, so it sounds like we're all mostly in agreement to move this meeting where we elect officers from February to March or April. It says in the agenda moving it from July. That must be a typo. Any other comments on that before we move on, since we don't have a 2/3 majority quote? We don't have a 2/3 conservative quorum majority. Matt?
Yeah, I think the former annual meeting was July, and it's the update that so moving it from July to March. What I was going to mention, Joseph, on the March thing and pushing it from February to March, I think is in part not so much for necessarily new members running for officer positions, but more so for folks who might be like Nageless, for instance, her term is running out, and like just the timing of getting folks reappointed from when a term ends. I'm thinking a little bit more so of folks who are probably members serving a second or third term, who just they might fall in this weird gap in February between having their term expired and not being reappointed yet. So I guess my feeling is March is still probably okay.
Okay, anything else on those amendments? Okay, moving on to member announcements. The Just Transition event. Colin, could you speak to that?
Sure, just one moment while I share my screen. Oh, could you make me co-host?
I don't have it either. I think, yeah, Matt's the administrator of the meeting.
Cool. Thanks, Matt. All right, 1 second, y'all. Great, can you see my screen?
Yes.
All right, so we met last week, that is, the sort of ad hoc working group that's been liaising with Environmental Justice Solutions on this town hall that we're putting together. So we have firmed up the date, which I believe is the 16th of March from, do you recall, Nejla, Alicia, is it 4 to 6 p.m. our time? Or 6 to 8?
I want to say 6 to 8.
Okay, yeah, so we're putting together this town hall, and we have, I believe, secured the contract with Environmental Justice Solutions, the consultant. David, I realize this is all totally new to you, so feel free to shoot me an email after the meeting, and I'm happy to sort of summarize, like, or fill you in essentially on what we've been doing. But long story short, we're putting together a consulting session with an environmental justice consulting firm from Oakland, or from the San Francisco Bay Area in California. And they're going to be presenting on a racial equity impact assessment that they put together that was adopted bindingly by the city of Oakland last year, or 2 years, in 2020, that is. And so this assessment and tool ensures, I think it means that the city is doing its due diligence to ensure that racial equity and all forms of equity really are incorporated into their climate action plan that they approved with this. So the update for you all is that we've hammered down the date. I believe we've secured the contract. That is, the consultant has signed it. And so we've put together an outreach plan here. This next phase essentially is making sure that we reach out to all the stakeholders we want to reach out to and get folks to attend. So if there are any boards and commissions at the county or city level that you think we should invite, please do add them here, or let us know, and we can feel free to add them. We have a list of stakeholders here whom we want to reach out to. And it's not, this is the audience for this event, right? It's not just government, but it's also grassroots organizations and maybe even certain businesses like Gnarly Tree Sustainability Institute. And then of course, university stakeholders as well. So we're casting a wide net, and we really invite you all to sort of contribute to this list, and if possible, contribute to outreach. So this is sort of a draft plan that I've put together that our ad hoc working group has to still go over and sort of finalize. But as you can see, there are a lot of stakeholders here, and we want to make sure that we do our due diligence, and both digitally through email and social media, but also in person. So that is, I'm going to be leading a flyering event around town, and anyone who's interested in that is welcome to join. That is posting up notices and potentially even flyering, but probably just posting notices. So yeah, we also need to develop a flyer. So if anyone has graphic design expertise and is interested in helping us out to throw that together, please do. If not, that's fine. Lauren says that she can we can handle it on Canva and through other means. So that is the high-level update, I think. Nejla, Alicia, please, and Jana, please let me know if I missed anything on that.
Yeah, I just wanted to add in that that we're trying to follow like a general like a design process, and so part of that is to diverge and then converge to try to eventually get to some of the most effective, impactful policy suggestions that might have the widest impact on these areas. And I do think that we may in our next working group meeting, we're going to be discussing ways to use existing data such as maybe, for instance, county health rankings data that compare our county with others in Indiana on lots of different of these things to help narrow down some of these policy areas before the event. So we are casting a wide net in as far as trying to see things very objectively to begin with, and not just be narrowed in on our own pet kind of policy areas. But at the same time, I think before we actually get to this event, we may narrow down those policy areas quite a bit more than they are right now. So I just wanted to throw that out there. Colin?
Yeah, and I'd add to that there's interest in essentially augmenting Bloomington's climate action plan by creating our own version of the racial equity impact assessment that the city of Oakland approved. So a REA essentially. And so we see, and the sort of bigger picture, right, is that this is sort of you could see this as our first major step in sort of the implementation phase of the climate action plan, right? Focused on racial equity, or really all types of equity. So this event is sort of our first major step in that direction. And hopefully that's the start of a productive process that, well, some of us hope that results in this REA getting adopted or developed rather for the city of Bloomington. So that is the hopefully not too convoluted long and short of it.
And I just put a link to the REA in the chat box for David specifically. Sorry, Alicia?
No, I was just going to echo what Colin was saying. The ultimate long-term goal of the way that what they did with the REA was they established a mechanism for getting feedback from the community, essentially. That's what they did. So that's what we need to do as well. So like Colin said, this is really the beginning.
Yeah, we're trying to do a fairly comprehensive community needs-based assessment in this working group.
David,
to answer your question, David, there's not, but I think that needs to be part of our outreach plan for this specific event. So ideally, the timeline is that we want to finalize our outreach plan and really hit the ground running no later than 2 months before the event. So the 16th of January, so in 5 days. If anyone's interested in this helping with outreach, it's going to be a moderate to heavy lift, I would think. So we really welcome your support. Yeah, thank you. Please feel free to just email me or Najla or Alicia or Jana.
And we're running out of time, so I'm not going to go on any more about that. Any comments or questions on that event or that working group? We've got about 4 minutes left. Your hand is still up, Colin. Did you have anything else to add? Okay, anyone have new business? Joseph?
So it's actually less new business, but a quick revisit. I was just noticing in the bylaws potential ambiguity again with this notion of majority. In Article 3 meetings, Chapter 3, who are present and voting. And then if we go to the amendment, it says a 2/3 majority of the commission may vote to amend these bylaws. So what I'm curious of is if the 2/3 applies to the commission or to the terms of a majority as defined in Article 3 meetings. And if that isn't already clear, if that should be something that we could also add clarity to when amending the bylaws. Is the explanation clear? Okay.
Like you could, for instance, define a 2/3 vote or clarify that. Yeah, I mean, a 2/3 majority is still a majority, right? It's a little bit ambiguous because Article 3 just says majority vote in quotes. One could interpret that to mean any kind of majority vote, including 2/3 majority votes. I see
So if I'll just state that it would be of my preference to make it like the other change that we're proposing in order to make it a 2/3 majority of the active members. And then again, I don't know if those voting or those actively voting should be included or not, but just wanted to quick point that out before the meeting ended.
Thank you, Joseph. So that sounds good, that we can maybe add that to what we're going to be voting to amend in our future meetings on this. All right, any other new business? Joseph, do you have something else to add? Your hand was up. Sorry.
Yes, one last quick thought. I know Lauren had mentioned that there wasn't any secretary present and she had been taking notes and was interested in having someone take notes. Did anyone volunteer to take that role?
I didn't explicitly say it, but I've been taking notes throughout, and I'm happy to get those too.
Okay, great. Thank you. I just wanted to make sure that all of these things were communicated back, and I was going to rewatch the video and take notes if no one had been already. So thank you.
Thanks for keeping us on our toes on that, Joseph. And thank you, Matt, for taking notes. Okay, does anyone have anything else to add? Any new business? All right, we're right at 7:29. I will entertain a motion to adjourn this meeting.
I move that we adjourn.
Second.
Second.
All right, thank you, everyone.